Hello and welcome to our first broadcast from the Sappi couch. From now on, here you will always get the latest information about the world from Sappi and news in the paper industry. Therefore, we always invite exciting guests, and today I'm very happy to welcome Wiersum, who is CEO of Sappi Europe, and Sarah Price, Sappi's sustainability manager. And so, of course, we are talking about the customer benefits of Sappi's approaches in case of sustainability. Starting with you, Barry, I have a question. According to the newspaper reports I read in the last day, Sappi is one of the leading paper manufacturers when it comes to sustainability. So could you describe just in a few sentences what sustainability means to Sappi?
Doing it in a few sentences, Marcus, is the problem, but I'm going to try. First of all, of course, we invest. So only in the last 2 weeks, we signed a big investment for several tens of millions of euros to take CO2 emissions out of the process. But if you want to be really committed to sustainability, it goes far deeper than that. Every company can invest. If you really want to make a difference, it starts with organization. And so 2 years ago, we created a department called Innovation and Sustainability. And sustainability is personified by Sarah, who's sitting here, and she'll talk all about that. The organization then ties innovation in products to sustainability because there is a huge opportunity there. But it goes further than that. It also creates a plan for decarbonization of our processes so that we can hit the targets that the EU Commission is setting us. But you know, even then, you're probably doing what other companies are doing too. So it goes further, and it goes into involvement in the setting up of legislation, in the setting up of how you cope and how you advise legislators to pass a law on environmental sustainability, which is practical. So that started, as far as I'm concerned, way back in 2010 when Connie Hedegaard was, she's Danish, she was a rather wonderful woman, and she was in charge of the of DG Environment, or DG Climate Action as it was called then. And she was having a terrible time because it was just at that time when, you know, the 2030 targets of 40% were coming out, and people were whispering about, well, maybe in 2050 we've got to go for zero. And there was wide-scale panic, and there were industries going into the press to say, you know, we just can't have this, it's not possible. And I went to see her as chairman of Sappi, which I was at that time, with a group of other CEOs, and we said to her, look, we come as friends. We want exactly what you want. We just got to survive getting there. And after that, we made friends effectively with them and helped to create the directive, which then turned into the Energy Directive. And ever since then, we've been involved as a company in all sorts of platforms, which essentially are there to help legislators or politicians to formulate a policy that will work, that will achieve their ends, but also make it possible for the industry to survive getting there, because that's really what it's all about. So in very, very brief words, that's, I think, what makes the difference. It's the involvement.
And so you just said a little bit, in a lot of companies, I mean, sustainability is part of the strategy also, as, with strong strategic goals and everything. So, Sarah, you told me about a new business strategy called Thrive 25. Can you tell us something about this? What is it? What is it meant? What are the goals of that?
Yeah, no, it's a pleasure because we're coming out with a new business strategy for Sappi. We launched in December. And it's Thrive 25, and it really confirms our existing business strategy, which is all about unlocking the power of sustainable wood fiber. And as part of that, you know, really seeing what Sappi's role is in building a thriving world, and really advancing the ways that we can influence and support. With regards to sustainability, it's been quite interesting because Sappi's always defined sustainability quite holistically around people, around planet, around prosperity. And in this next business strategy, we keep this holistic approach, of course, but we further articulate what it is that we want to focus on for sustainability and really identifying where we can make a positive contribution, where we need to minimize our footprint, and where there's business opportunities in that as well. And we've used the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals as our framework. Of course, this is the global agenda for sustainable development that the world is working towards over the next till 2030. And so we've identified the priority SDGs where we think that really resonate for Sappi, and we're fully committed to achieving our targets within that context over the next 5-year period. So that is also really articulating what we want to achieve on sustainability within our business strategy, which is exciting.
A big effort, yeah, sounds very interesting. As you know, there is very often talk about the Green Deal. So I don't know if everybody knows what it is. Can you help us understand a little bit more what the Green Deal is and what is the impact of the Green Deal for Sappi?
Yeah, of course. So the Green Deal is really a vision for Europe, and it's focused on decoupling economic growth with resource use. So if you can achieve that, as we've done over the past years in Europe, and we can continue to do that, then we're creating a sustainable economy. So at the heart of the European Green Deal is Europe's carbon neutrality goal, 2050, the continent as climate neutral, which is a very ambitious target. And really by working around this vision and articulating all the policies to support this Green Deal vision, Europe hopes to really address challenges relating to climate change, relating to biodiversity loss, and of course continue to contribute to all the socio-economic challenges that we face. So really ensuring that it's a socially just and inclusive transition as well for Europe. So it's a huge opportunity for companies like ours, but also a challenge, because it's not only a vision, but of course all the policies need to be revised and aligned to really achieve and deliver this Green Deal, and ultimately many action plans and steps that companies like ours, but actually all of us in Europe, need to take together to achieve this Green Deal.
Barry, in your opinion, the Green Deal, do you think it is also a growth opportunity for sustainable packaging and responsible consumption in our whole world? Yeah.
Without a doubt. We're just at the start of that whole development now, where the kinds of technologies which companies like ours are pioneering enable a wholesale replacement of other packaging types, mainly plastics, to start off and turn those into completely recyclable packaging types. And people, the population generally recycles paper. I don't know why it is. Well, we do know why it is. There's been lots of legislation, lots of encouragement to do so, but we're used to doing it, and it's much easier for ordinary individuals to recycle paper than it is to do it with plastic for some reason or other. So we have this big advantage, and then it's all about technology. How can you find the technology that will, in the first place, perform in the right way, but secondly, also do it at a cost that the consumer can stand, that the brand owners can stand. So a lot of work goes on in the innovation department together with business development, new business development, to find the customers, the route to the brand owner, the route from the brand owner to the retailer, and get products through that chain, because they all have to work. It's not a question that, oh, well, we have paper and isn't it wonderful and you'll just buy it. Not at all. The work that goes in to developing the product, getting it to work through the packaging machines, getting it printed, getting it folded, getting it converted, and then finally into the brand owner, so that it's, as far as he's concerned, just like any other product. It works through the process and it can sell. That's a huge task, and it's one which we have really invested in, and we're rather good at.
That sounds very ambitious. I mean, it's like a big challenge for Sappi. If I just want to read it, because there are 3 major fields, like CO2 reduction targets. They are very ambitious. Energy efficiency targets are very ambitious. We have to do with the forests. We'll come back to that, Sarah, later on. But what would you say, what is your main target, or would you say all these 3 big fields are so ambitious for us and are so important for us?
And you've got to do them all. So the product development is one activity. It's very important because it's the future of our business. And secondly is the way that you get CO2 out, and that is in part about reducing energy and in part about getting the energy that you do use from green sources. So What comes out of the Commission at the moment in terms of their documentation is a big push for green energy, whether it's from sun or from wind or for water, nuclear also a little bit in the discussion, and then also biomass, of course. As far as we're concerned, we look at this in two ways. First of all, can you access real green energy at a competitive cost in the future? And secondly, is it going to be economically better to reduce energy usage than it is to try and get hold of more green energy? Because clearly there's going to be a race for green energy. That means it's going to be more expensive. And out of the documentation from the EU, you can read that they expect electricity to remain high, and electrification is their future. So we're spending a lot of time in R&D, and also I happen to be chairman of a high-level steering group for a technology that's looking to take energy out of the production of pulp, to see, well, in what way could we find technologies that after 2030 will make the big difference between how far you can get with energy reduction and CO2 emission reduction with conventional technology, and then the step from 2030 to 2050, which is how do you get to neutrality? And that is a huge question, because it takes into account also the fact that you probably have to build new equipment in new installations. This means that there's a big question mark on the balance sheet, and therefore I will also participate in high-level thinking groups to look at with the Commission, with the finance community, and with industry, to say, okay, well, how can you organize the financing of such a transition without leaving all the risk to industry, in which case you're going to put in a big delay. So there's a lot of challenge there, but I must say I find it fascinating. It's one of the best times to join the paper industry now. It's amazing.
You are so fascinating, so that's even for me, it's very nice. So Sarah, I tried to make a cut on this point after you were saying all these interesting things. But I will add another one, which is always very important, and that's if we talk about sustainability, always I can hear about the circular economy, which is one very important part in sustainability. So what would you say are the opportunities and challenges for Sappi to further embrace the circular economy? And let me ask another question. If we have an audience where you have some of your clients outside there, could you tell us what is the customer's benefit out of thinking so in the circular economy, like Sappi does?
No, so I think, to start out explaining a little bit around the circular economy, because it is a word that gets used a lot, circularity or circular economy, but not everyone totally understands what it is and what it isn't. The three main principles to the circular economy is this idea around designing waste and pollution out of production systems. And the second principle around the circular economy is around trying to keep materials and products in use. So really thinking of long-term, recyclable, keeping products in use instead of just throwing them away. And then the third aspect is looking at nature, essentially, and making sure that we're restoring natural systems as we go. So there's these three principles, and it's really interesting because I think so much is inherent for the paper industry around circularity. I mean, the fact that we rely on wood fiber, which is a material that comes out of renewable forests, and in fact, when we make paper, we can, as Barry mentioned, it's widely recycled. I think collection rates are around 72% here in Europe. And so people often talk about the average life cycle of a paper fiber being maybe 7 times, maybe it's higher, maybe it's lower, but it can get used over and over again. And I think it's that recyclability of paper that really is one strong example of how the paper industry really articulates and it demonstrates the circular economy. And I think it's also one of the big benefits for our customers, in fact, because so many retailers, brand owners, other companies have made commitments to recyclability. They want to have their packaging that's recyclable. They want to switch to fiber-based products from plastic. And I think it's the circularity of paper that can really support them on that journey. So you know, recyclability is a big part, but it's not the only part. I think also within the industry, we make so many. We really reduce waste, in fact, by using all our side streams. By creating new products out of different parts of the wood fiber, we can replace lots of fossil-derived materials. So whether it's green chemicals, sugars, other products that we can make from our side streams, also energy sources. So it's this, you know, utilizations to make sure that anything that we procure in terms of wood fiber, we're using and we're putting to good use in sustainable products. And then the last part is maybe around our manufacturing. I think, you know, our systems, the way we recover energy, the way we look at water, a lot of principles around circularity there. And I think for sure the industry is a good example of many ways to really embrace the circular economy. But of course, there's always room to improve as well.
Mary, you already mentioned before the role of the European Union. I would like to come back to that. And what do you think, how does the EU's commitment to climate neutrality by 2050, that's the year that we have right now written down in the aspect. So how do you think that it affects a business like Sappi?
Well, first of all the noise, the drumbeat coming out of the Commission is this we're going to do. It's not negotiable. It's not an aspiration. It is much more, we're going to do this. And you as industry have to make it work. So for us, the first thing we then do is to say, okay, what's the gap between where we are now and where we have to be in 2050? In what way can we close that gap? We've got a plan now which gets us very close to the target for 2030 by 2025. So there are things that we can do fairly quickly, and that's probably true for most of the industry. The trouble is, the better you are, the more difficult it is to improve. So we have some mills that are really, really good, and for them to improve by 50% is really hard. So that takes a whole different kind of route. Now, in our conversations with the Commission, we say, well, we would like to understand from you to what extent you think you're going to solve the problem through the provision of really green energy. And by that, we don't mean green energy which is green today but not tomorrow. We mean real green energy. And the second thing is, to what extent can we cooperate as an industry to find technologies that take energy out? And so we have got together with a series of companies here in Germany to put together a consortium to try and identify a way of making carbon neutral paper, or making paper in a carbon neutral way. So it's a very exciting project indeed. And it's these are the sorts of things where you can go to the Commission or you can go to the member states and say, will you help us do that? And then certainly in this country, Germany, from that point of view, very far-sighted indeed. The answer is yes, we'll help you. So more and more of these kind of questions, I think, will come up in the same way as on the pulp side with this other technology which we're looking at, also being done as a consortium with machine manufacturers involved as well as the paper industry. And there it then becomes a question also of saying, well, how much can we do ourselves? How much is it technology we need to get in from somewhere else? And what is the role of member states and the EU to help bring this about by real funding? And they are very open to those kinds of things, so long as it is, one, new, two, there is cooperation. They don't want individual solutions from companies. They want industry solutions. They're right. And three, it really takes a real, a substantial amount of CO2 out, and those are the three big reasons. So if you do those and you think about those properly, you can have a very good discussion with them.
Mm-hmm. You know what I'm thinking now? When we entered the studio today, when we walked in here and we sat down, we had to wear masks and everything because we are facing this nasty pandemic out there all around the world. Just to add one question in this topic, do you personally think that the current realities of COVID-19 affect the sustainability performance in the paper industry? Do you think it has any effect?
You know, in a way, yes. because we're getting used to a new way of working. It has its limits, in my view, and I'm very interested to hear what Sarah's view is. But in my view, it does have its limits in terms of human interaction. And perhaps it's the sort of person I am, but I need really good human interaction when we have big decisions to make. Then I want to be in the room with other people, with other decision makers, to make it work. And whether that's within the company, outside the company, with our customers, or with the industry through our industry association, or with politicians, you just need that one bit more. So there's going to have to be a balance between how we work virtually and how we find ways of coming together. So that's one side of it. Then, will it make a big difference to our industry in total? Well, yes, it will. And the big difference it will make is that the graphic industry itself has been hit hard by COVID-19, and there is a one-off reduction in the volume of graphic paper which is sold and will be sold in the future. So that's something that we get used to. We have an opportunity on the other side, and that's a really great opportunity because that capacity can be used to grow our specialities and packaging business. So we've started a new work stream which has worked at lightning speed to identify the areas in which we can grow and use that capacity to good effect and help us grow what is a truly wonderful business in the future.
Mm. Does this reflect also kind of your experiences?
Yeah, I mean, maybe to complement Barry, I'll go a little bit in a different direction, because I think what COVID has illustrated to society is that we are capable of collective action. And I would say that before COVID, we would have been skeptics that we could all change our way of behaving, change our traveling, change our working functions, change so much of our lifestyle globally. And I think that's what's required in the face of climate change. I think that's what's required in the face of, many of the big environmental challenges that our planet's facing. And I think COVID, as unfortunate as it is, has shown us that actually it is possible, that we take things more seriously, that we globally commit and change and make compromise. And to me, that's been a unfortunate but necessary learning. So I think when I look at how, in the kind of policy discussions around sustainability topics, when I look at how companies are stepping up, despite, just like Sappi, despite being, in economic difficulty or an economic climate that's difficult, we're still committed, we're determined, and we're making really ambitious commitments to science-based targets, to charting our way forward, in light of climate change as well. So, and I see that across the business community. So I think there's some positive things coming out from sustainability, despite the unfortunate reality of COVID.
So thank you very much for answering my question about this COVID issue, a little bit besides our innovations issues and so on.
Fine.
So
it is. It has a real effect.
It has, and we have to talk about it, of course. So, but let me come to one of my favorite questions for today, because it's a question where I'm personally involved in. Because when I was talking about to my friends about sitting here today and having you as guests, and we are talking about sustainability, they asked me if we need forest for healthy climate, so how can cutting trees down be part of the solution? Yes. And I said, I will ask this to Sarah Price today because I have her on the couch. So.
Yeah, no, indeed, it's a question I love as well, and it's a topic of so much discussion and debate. And I think at the heart of it, there's always some confusion and misperception around forestry. And this idea is not understood by everyone that actually forests are a renewable resource. And if they're under sustainable management, you can responsibly harvest trees, and the forests remain, the forests recover, and that's really the beauty of a renewable resource. And I think as society, we need to get more comfortable with this, because actually if we want to keep fossils in the ground, we need alternatives. We need biomass, we need biomaterials, we need bioeconomy, essentially. And so if we're looking at it responsibly, if we're managing forests well, they are, of course, capable of producing wood fiber and growing trees and, continuing to grow trees even when they're harvested. So I think that is a topic which often gets confused with the topic of deforestation. And rightly so, people are concerned about deforestation, about the loss of tropical forests or the loss of forests anywhere in the world. But I think it's really important to distinguish that deforestation is actually when you're not only cutting down trees, but you're changing that land use from forests to a different land use, and those trees do not grow back. So if you look at clearing a forest for a field, and then growing crops or a different type of a material or different land use, that in fact is deforestation. And people often get that confused with active forest management, which is really the opposite side of the coin. Because for those of us in the forest sector relying on wood fiber, it's in our interest to keep forests standing and to keep forests healthy. And actually, when you have forests that are under active forest management, it's actually really good for climate. It's good for biodiversity, and it's good for the bioeconomy. So it's a little bit a topic that gets sometimes confused. Sometimes the headlines make people a little bit, emotional about it. But ultimately, I think forests are the answer for so many things.
Just to add to that, because it's such an important point, I was sitting on a panel to advise the UK government on what to do about deforestation. And at the beginning, the pulp and paper industry were on their target list for, these guys are deforesting. By the end of it, it was off. Why? Because they realized that the deforestation is not done by foresters. The biggest allies against deforestation is the pulp and paper industry, because we need this thing to happen. The other thing which I think is really important is there is misunderstanding about just how efficient a forest is at sequestration and carbon sink. Yes, a forest that's left alone is a good carbon sink, not necessarily a good sequestrator. A managed forest, very good sequestrator, and also a good carbon sink. So you have both things, both desirable outcomes when you have a managed forest, as well as an economic benefit. And I don't see how you can tell people you may not have an economic benefit from where you live. This doesn't seem to be to work. On the other hand, if that results in deforestation, we have to find ways of stopping it. And so now I think there is some legislation coming through the system also in Europe, which will probably help there. And it's another one where we are involved as a company to say, well, how can we help you devise essentially a law which will work in practice? That's the whole trick of it, and we'll stop deforestation, and you'll find us completely on your side.
So would you guys say after that that the substitution of fossil-derived materials is a likely solution, or is it one part of the solution, but an important one?
Oh, absolutely. I think the power of wood fiber to replace fossil fuels is there's so much potential there, and already we realize it in our lives every day. There was recently a study by Sappi, the Confederation of European Paper Industries, where they looked at the climate effect of the forest sector here in Europe. And it was really interesting because, like Barry mentioned, they looked at the role of forests as carbon sinks, even the net carbon sink. So even once you remove trees or harvest, how much carbon is still in the forest. They also looked at how much carbon is stored in wood products. So when you build a timber house, that's sequestered carbon that's stored in that wood for a very long time. And thirdly, they looked at what was the last point was around substitution. So they actually tried to quantify the way that forest products replace fossil-derived material and what's the carbon benefit of that. And when they summed up all of those things together with the emissions we create in the industry, there was a net carbon benefit, a climate benefit of 806 million tons of carbon emissions a year. So that's the positive effect of the forest sector here in Europe, which I think equated to 20% of EU fossil emissions per year. So it's massive, and actually if you get the balance right between actually incentivizing forest management, expanding forests, using them for their natural ability to sequester carbon, but also provide incentives like paper-based materials and a thriving forest sector, you can actually step up to the challenge that we're facing with climate change.
And just to add to that, you asked about whether there will be a future for fiber-based products to replace fossil-based products. Absolutely, and we're investing in it. Mm-hmm. We have invested in Europe. We started a couple of interesting projects that way. One is a composite, which is beginning to sell. We're also investing in ways in which we can make chemicals out of the side streams of pulp from the sugars, which will replace fossil-based chemicals. So, and you know, all the pulp, and this is very much from pulp, but all the pulp makers are doing this in Europe. So there's an awful lot of money going into research to replace fossil-based materials. But this will take time. There are two reasons for that. First of all, there are new processes, which means that the process has to be balanced with downstream processes. But the second thing is fossil-based products have 150 years of cost learning. And so you've got to find a way where you get down that cost learning process quickly enough, or else find policies which make it economically worthwhile to change. And those are the kind of debates which I think you will start to see in the second half of this decade, but certainly after 2030, these things will become important.
You were just, I was listening very carefully, and you were saying something about your investments. So you're also investing in functional paper and in new forms of dealing with functional paper, right? Mm.
Yeah. So we have been developing this rather wonderful product, which is a highly efficient barrier against oxygen, grease and moisture. And it's been developed in this tiny little company we bought in Scotland, but technically extremely sound. And so we know it works. We've got commercial volumes going from the very small capacity it has. So we're going to expand capacity there, and we're going to be finding ways of producing that sort of product, not just on one capacity, but on one capacity type, but on more than one, to try and offer more than one solution. Because what we find is that different product types need different solutions, and one needs the most extreme solution, and that can cost more, but not all of them. So there's quite a lot of both conversion work and building work that will have to go on in the next few years to answer those questions. But it's going to be a serious volume business, yes.
Okay, I have one last question to both of you. We are running out of time. It's so interesting to listen to your insights today. But next time we will talk about the real firework of innovations that Sappi has right now in these days. Would you say recyclability of paper packaging and all these things and the recycling rate, is there a world of 100% recycling rate or so? Would you say this recyclability and the sustainability issues will be the big part of Sappi's innovations?
Yes, I think recyclability is going to become the key. There is this ambition to have a product which is entirely polymer free. And in our research centres, we are working on that, and we'll get there. The question then is, how expensive is it, and how applicable is it across the product range, across the markets that we serve? What is going to be entirely necessary is the need to show that whatever you have as a barrier product or as a packaging product, it is recyclable. If it's not recyclable, it is not going to be tolerated. It's only a question of time. Now, the paper industry is very good at 72%. Can we get to 100? I don't know, but we're certainly way ahead of everybody else, and we intend to stay there.
Okay, you would sign this also? Definitely.
And we're involved in a collaboration, a cross-value chain collaboration on fiber-based packaging that's really has a focus on perfecting circularity and really trying to ratchet up from the 72% in paper. I think it's about 86% if you look at fiber-based packaging here in Europe. But indeed, who knows if 100 is possible, but there's things we can do. There's technologies, there's product development, there's collaboration, there's informing policy, all these things that we're focused on to try to perfect circularity in fiber-based packaging.
Okay, so we stay tuned.
Yeah.
we'll watch it. And so I say thank you very much, Wiersum, Sarah Price, for being here today, for sharing these very interesting insights from the work of Sappi all around the world here. And thank you for watching, and I hope you will be with us next time Then your colleague Thomas Quatterwil, Vice President, will be here with us as a guest, and also Bernardo Semadini, Director of Innovations. And of course, we will talk about innovations and sales. So I hope you will be with us next time. And until then, I wish you a very good time, and I say goodbye. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.